Wayne Butler, alcoholic. By the grace of God and the power of 12 steps and fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous, I've not had a drink of alcohol since the 8th of November 1977. I'm pretty happy about that. Nor have I had any pills, powders, potions, or lotions that unnecessarily alter my emotions. However, I have been known to date women of a mind and mood-altering nature. I try not to make eye contact right about there, because I can find them wherever I look. I love AA. How about you, huh? I do. Thank you, Maze, for starting us off. Daisy. Thank you for starting it off right. I'm just a drunk. No, by the way, I'm just the pawn in Joe's chess game here. He found out I was going to be here of service to another event over the weekend, and he says, will you come in a day early? And I'm thinking, if I do, I've got to hear I'm the sickest man in AA again, and Matt's dead. You know what I'm saying? Rest in peace. And sure enough. But I was taught not to say no to a legitimate AA request. There are those alcoholics who can find it okay to do that. But I know who I work for. It isn't you. So your opinion about that doesn't matter. I don't mean no disrespect. Sometimes I wish your opinion did matter, because then I could stay home and play volleyball and come to Fresno at 110 degrees. But I was told that when you're over 30 years sober, the heat don't bother you. It's easy for him to say. He's so short, the heat don't hit him. So. I'm sure you don't know who I'm talking about. I love AA. Did I mention that? I've got about 40 minutes to share 38 years, and so I'm not going to do that. But I think the most important thing that I can do is make an opportunity present for a newcomer to identify, because that's all it's about. If you don't identify, why would you come to AA? It's like having cancer and going to a diabetic doctor. If you misidentify the problem, the solution won't take effect. And the same's here true for AA. That's why I think we're so adamant about our singleness of purpose. It isn't exclusionary. Our singleness of purpose is inclusionary of every alcoholic and potential alcoholic. But we have to remember that it's very, very important. So I will monitor my talk to honor our traditions. That's just my thing. I don't judge other people too much. I suppose that's for my 40th year. I'm working on it. I do want to say this before I get all caught up in I sometimes get hypnotized by my own voice, so you're going to have to hang in there with me. I like that better than self-centered, don't y'all? See, I don't like some of those words. Like selfish. I like concerned. And self-pity, depression. Self-pity is the spiritual depression of AA. And just as a sidebar, I know we got some professionals in here that work in the field, I bet. And they'll tell you this is true. A clinician cannot say to me, I'm feeling sorry for myself. That's abusive. And they can lose their license for telling me I'm feeling sorry for myself. But they can tell me I'm depressed all day long. But the problem with that is if you diagnose me with depression and you medicate me, I'm insulated from the solution. But if I can identify it as spiritual depression, as outlined in our big book in our 12 and 12, then the spiritual effect produced can work for me. But if I'm misdiagnosed or myth-informed, maybe not so much. I don't know. And that isn't meant to cast aspersions. That's just what I believe based on our big book in our 12 and 12. And it's by God's grace that I get to use the big book in the 12 and 12, isn't it? See, I believe in the source and the solution. I believe the source for me is God Almighty. I believe my source is God, as I understand Him. But that's not the solution. I wish it was, because I had God before I got here. I was a preacher, too. Can you imagine that? You don't want me to go into that phase, do you? I'm living proof that church and God alone will not keep a man like me sober. It's not a bad thing, church and God. But it wasn't sufficient. But I'm here to report to you that as long as I'm in the solution, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, And I remained tied to the source, what Chuck C. talked about. Said, my only problem, when I was 18 days sober, Chuck C. says to me, I'm at a convention. He's one of the 6 members of AA that come out to Rock Island, Illinois to give a talk. And I happened to be there with 18 days of sobriety. And I sat down at Chuck's table during the banquet. And you know what? And Elsa was with him. Many of you may not know this name, but some of you do. And, I still had stink because I'm a Skid Row rat. That's what I am. That's really what I am. I know I don't look like a Skid Row rat, but I was and I am deep down inside. And there's a day I could become a Skid Row rat again someday. I'm not putting me down. I'm stating the fact. When you live in a dumpster for 5 years, when you climb out of that dumpster, you don't just start smelling good. And I used to lie and say I didn't have no teeth, but I actually had 4 or 5. And they were strategically located. Like when the wind blew, I whistled really good. I was the vision for you, folks, I'll tell you. And I remember sitting at that banquet table with the most revered man I know of in AA, with Chuck C. I'm sitting next to him, and he draws this picture. He draws a line with a big circle, and he said, you know what that is? I said, a circle. He says, no, that's God. I said, oh. And I've got 18 days. And then he drew a stick figure. He said, you know who this is? And I'm thinking he's going to say me, right? Because I'm used to people putting me down and telling me I'm the problem and all that kind of stuff. He wrote Chuck C. And he says, no, it's me. Now I'm mad because it's not me. Daisy, you understand, don't you? And he says, you know what my problem is? I'm starting to get the picture, I think. Pun intended. And he says, my problem is separation from God. That's my only problem, the only problem I'll ever have in my entire life. Everything else in my life stems from that one problem. And he said, my solution is conscious unity. And he says, I get my conscious unity through AA. And it registered. You'll hear people say, don't dismiss what you don't believe. Put it on a shelf for future reference. And I did put that on future reference. Now here it is 38 years later, one day at a time, and I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, I only have one problem in life. Only one. From that one problem stems all my dis-ease, sober. And that's when I'm consciously and unconsciously separated from my loving Father God. And that's baffling if you're new. Because if you're new, like I was once new, praying doesn't work very quick. I don't think he's listening. You ever get like that? Say a prayer and think, okay, now. He doesn't understand the nowness of now. I'll tell you that right now. First, I suppose I better tell you I like to drink. I think that's necessary to qualify for AA, is to have drank. And I love Budweiser. Anybody else? I love Budweiser. I'm going to tell you the truth in case you're new. Pay attention. There's days I miss Budweiser even today. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I wouldn't drink if I could, safely. I don't think about it. I don't dwell on it. But I know that if I could drink safely, and I'd become convinced that I cannot. But if I thought I could drink safely, you'd have a different speaker here tonight, because I'd have stayed right there in St. Pete, Florida, and probably had 2 or 3, maybe 4. All depends on what you think safely means. See, safely to me is not to get a ride with Popo. You know what I'm saying? She might beat the hell out of me when I go to bed, but that ain't Popo. It ain't the same thing. There's days, I swear to God, there's days now I will drive by a Budweiser billboard and I will slow down and have a moment of silence. And I also like fine wine. Ripple. Now, if you're under 40, don't raise your hand because you'll be lying. How many of you remember Ripple? Now, the reason I say if you're under 40, because the EPA, do you know who that is? The Environmental Protection Agency? Their first act was to shut that chemical plant down. I'll tell you that right now. I also like a little Cisco, a little night train. Anybody else ride the train? That'll make you see stuff that cocaine never done for you. I'll tell you that right now. Anybody fly with Thunderbird? That gives new meaning to give them the bird. Okay. Now I like a little Mad Dog Doocy Doocy. But when I got money in my pocket, it's Boone's Farm. I know where I'm at. I'm in Fresno. Do you know why I like Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill? Because I'm a puker. I am a projectile puker. If you're eating with me, you better give me room. That's all I'm going to tell you. But the reason I like Boone's Farm is because when I puke, it looks like I'm bleeding internally. Daisy, where you at? I developed cancer and everything because I wanted a free drink and people felt sorry for me. I had cancer, tuberculosis. I made up diseases I never even heard of myself before. Yeah, some of these taverns was waiting for me to die, if you know what I mean. There's something strange about that, wouldn't you agree? I mean, they got all kinds of diagnoses in the DSM-3. That's when I got sober. Now there's a DSM-5. And if you don't know what the DSM is, that's the diagnostic manual that the experts use to diagnose people like me and you. And I only got diagnosed 21 different times. I was busy. I was never diagnosed alcoholic. And I just want to share that with you because even though they meant well, they were diagnosing the symptom, but they couldn't see the real problem. Because you see, for a guy like me, and if you're an alcoholic of my type, the symptom that they can't see is the root cause of my problem that's going to kill me someday. And that's the disease of alcoholism. And I didn't know that. I only drink beer and fine wine. How can I be an alcoholic? I mean, how can you drinking Ripple? How can you be an alcoholic? Come on, I don't drink Jack Daniels and all. I don't drink the real booze. You know what I'm saying? I didn't understand that. And I guess the only thing I had to qualify it against was my mom and dad. Now, my dad drank that brown whiskey. My dad was a truck driver. He was about 6'4", weighed 250 pounds, and that guy was a bad guy. He was a tough guy. I wanted to be a tough guy too, like my dad, but I was overly sensitive. Makes me feel creepy thinking about it, but my dad wanted me to be bad like him. He wanted me to drive that 18-wheeler like him. He was mobbed up out of Chicago. He ran illegal whiskey and cigarettes. He would come home with a tractor trailer with bullet holes in it, and he thought that was cool. So my brother wanted to be like him. You know, my older brother, one of them. I wanted to write poetry. By the way, I write good poetry. I really do. But my dad found a poem when I was 9, and that was when he made me eat that poem. I decided he didn't like that. It was really good, though. For a 9-year-old sitting on the toilet writing a poem, that's not bad. But he said he called it something. I'm not going to use that word today. But that didn't make me an alcoholic. Growing up in that alcoholic home, watching my dad drink whiskey and beat the bejeebers out of my mother, watching my mom drink tequila and get even with him when he passed out. By the way, she won. Let me tell you that right now. I love my mother. I love my mother stood about this big. She's a German woman. Bad. She was like 5 foot nothing, weighed 150 pounds, 160 pounds, muscle bound. My mother was a weightlifter. My mother was tattooed from the neck down. Now today, gals, you know it's acceptable, isn't it? Got news for you. In 1958, it's not. So my mother worked in the carnival, the Royal American Show. She was the tattooed lady that you paid to go into the tent to watch her beat the hell out of men. My mother was the wrestler in the circus. Her forearms were like Popeye. I'm telling you. And she had eagles tattooed on each forearm, and she would do this, and the eagles would fly. And you'd pay 50 cents to watch my mama do that. Then you go in the next tent and you'll see me in there with the chickens. We ain't going to go any further than that. We were a carnival family. Well, no, don't go there. I might be trisexual, but not chicken sexual. I'll tell you that right now. Okay, that's an outside issue. So my mom, let's just love her to death. When my dad stopped drinking, so did my mom. I'd have sworn my mom was an alcoholic. She drank fifth for fifth with my dad. But when my dad stopped drinking, my mom abruptly stopped to support him. And then after a while, she was able to start drinking again socially. And to the day she died, she never ever got drunk again. So it isn't about how much you drink. It is not. Wouldn't that be nice if it was? If it was, I can't be here because I'm what you call a periodic alcoholic. My sponsor says, yeah, you drink, period. But that ain't what he meant. Which means I could drink and then something would stop me. Either the popo man, psychiatric ward. By the way, you call it 5150 here, right? I was 5150 17 times. But 15 of them were self-sign-in. Now, I'm going to tell you why in case you're interested. Or the event you might have a slip. It gets lonely out there. I learned something. Given the way I acted and the way I looked, the way I smelled and the way I drank with 4 teeth, I couldn't get a date on the street to save my life. If you put me in a co-ed psych ward, I was a pretty charming fellow. I had a crush on Psycho-Sober Sybil. And I wanted to really have a date with her. And the psych ward I know it might be an outside issue. I'm going to tie it up into alcoholism. The ward I was on, they brought the med cart right onto the floor. And then we lined up like little ducks with paper cups to get our pills. And I was really liking Psycho-Sober. And so I lined up to the back of the line because I heard she was taking Thorazine. You know what that does? It slows you down. It means I can catch up. So she took her pills and she's walking like this, like she always did. And I thought, well, I've only been here a few days. I'm going to catch up. I took my pills, didn't realize one of them was Thorazine. And I'm trying to get my mojo up, get my courage up. I got no booze, so I'm really trying to talk myself into this. And when I finally busted a move, it went like this. I didn't know what happened to me. 17 times. Now, there's something wrong with me. I don't know what it is. I would have bet you money I'm psychiatric. I would have bet you money that I'm psychiatric. And I've been taking some type of psychiatric medication since the age of 9 because I've been diagnosed since the age of 9. First one was Ritalin, and I don't want to get into that because that's an outside issue. Unless I was misdiagnosed all those times. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't blame them because they can't diagnose that which they cannot see. They could not see that Wayne Butler was suffering from a spiritual malady. They couldn't see it because there's no x-ray. There's no blood test to take to find out if you have a spiritual malady. And if you've been to as many tent revivals as I've been, oh my God, I've been sprinkled, dunked, and dang near drowned in every religion there's going. I mean, the Pentecostals held me under till I bubbled. I surrendered to Jesus just so he wouldn't drown me. I know about waterboarding, I'll tell you that right now. Get that demon out of you, boy. Get that demon out of you. You feeling the love? My wife took me to tent revivals trying to get the Spirit of Jesus in me so I'd quit drinking. God bless her, she tried too. I'll tell you one quick time. Here's the baffling feature of alcohol that isn't blood testable. No x-ray for it. She took me to yet another tent revival. And I, of course, did the altar call because it was either that or get divorced. So I went up on the deck, and they had this magical electric podium that they hit a button and the podium goes back, exposing the dunk tank right there on the stage. I didn't know they did that. I thought I had some time. So I went up there and I kneeled down. There's the dunk tank. And so by God, he held me under till I swear to God I was going to drown. I'm in. Now I have to tell you the truth. I did feel something. Something began to shift in me. I wanted what that preacher was talking about. I wanted what he was promising me if I would just give in and give up. I wanted it. And by the time we were done that night, my wife and I had a discussion with the pastor. Because, you know, when they're doing that up on the stage, they've got pastors all around who want to get you while you're hot. They don't want you cooling off. You got to get it now. Well, I feel it coming back. So my wife and I agreed to go to the church on Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And I said, I'm in. Something happened to me. I'm telling you. I said, I'm in. Let's do this. I wasn't because I was afraid of the divorce anymore. I felt something happen to me. Bill Wilson calls it spiritual intoxication in the big book. But I didn't know that then. So we're driving home from the tent revival. We passed Larry's Oasis. And I said to my wife, because now I call her baby now because I'm spiritual. I said, baby, let's stop at Larry's Oasis. She says, why? Well, because Larry needs Jesus too. Larry was my best buddy on the street. She says, I don't think that's a good idea. I said, well, I think it is. Why shouldn't I go in there? I got God now. I'm good. I'm not making this phony. This is what I was doing. So I went in the back door because I didn't want to see none of the people see me going in the front door for some strange reason. But I walk in the back door of Larry's Oasis, and there's Larry behind the bar. And all the guys that I used to drink with were right there. You know how we are, ready to make fun of the saint. I see Larry behind the bar. He's got a cigarette rack right above him, right? And he looks down underneath there and he sees me. And he goes just like this in front of everybody. Jesus, Butler, what's gotten into you? I said, exactly. They even stopped shooting pool. They're going to watch this. So I said, Larry, I've been up to the county fair. I've been to the tent revival. I got Jesus, and you need him too. And he said, yes, I do. Let me buy you a Budweiser. We'll talk about it. I said, okay. My wife is standing at the door wondering what's happened. Larry sets up 2 Budweisers. Now, I don't know where Jesus went that night, but I went to jail. I can tell you that right now. Some people think that's mockery, but if you're an alcoholic of my type, you know that's exactly what happens to abnormal drinkers like me, and I presume many of you. I did not know why I couldn't just stop it once I got started. And I could go weeks without a drink. But what I can also tell you is it was worse in between. When those weeks that I wasn't drinking, I never stopped thinking about drinking. I never stopped thinking about the guys at Larry's Oasis. My Vietnam vets, we didn't need to see each other as much. It's a very interesting dynamic. So on Halloween night, 1972, I hear a knock on my dumpster lid. And I'm home. Alone. Some of you women are pretty uppity, I got to tell you. I had my own pad and everything. Well, I knew it wasn't a dumpster pickup man at 1 a.m., I'll tell you that. Because when you live in a dumpster, you better know when they're coming. Because they don't knock, they dump. So I lifted the lid and I looked out there and I couldn't believe it. You know who was standing out there? My dad. Now, he had a look in his eye I never saw before. I've known that man for 23 years of my life, and he's the most hateful, despicable human being I ever saw, and I swore I'd kill him and piss on his grave someday, forgive the language. And there he is. Last time I saw him was right outside the Rock Island County Courthouse. I got to tell you something that's not very pleasant, but it is what it is. My dad took me to court to get a restraining order against me, and I showed up to fight that restraining order. The judge didn't like me, apparently. I'm not going to tell you why, because this ain't the appropriate forum. But that judge handed down a restraining order where I couldn't go within 1,000 yards of my own mother. I couldn't go within 1,000 yards of either of my wives. It was the 60s. And I couldn't go within 1,000 yards of my own children. That was what the judge said. So I leave the courtroom, and I'm already thinking how I'm going to get around that. I'm already thinking it. And here comes my dad from back out of the parking lot. My dad was never not strapped. For those of you who don't know, that means packing a gun. He comes walking up to me in full daylight. And he says to me, boy, You and I both know that restraining order ain't worth the paper it's written on for you. So he pulled that pistol out of his back pocket and he stuck it right to my forehead. And he says, if I even get a whisper that you're near my grandkids, I'm putting you down. And my dad meant that. My dad would have done that. That was the catalyst to put me on Skid Row. It isn't just alcohol that put me on the skids. It was a thing called a broken spirit. And that's really what I want to kind of talk about, because I didn't know that the unusual effect produced by alcohol is a sleeve, if you will. It is something that gives me the false impression that I'm okay. It isn't just that I'm relaxed. Alcohol does something for a drinker like me that it isn't biochemically indicated to do. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about it being addictive and all that stuff, but if you know anything about science, alcohol itself is not an addictive substance. It just isn't. 99 out of 100 people can drink alcohol safely. It's not addictive as such. I know that, and that almost killed me knowing that, because I could not understand why I could go weeks without a drink, pick up a drink, and drink until I'm stopped, and then go another month or two. I couldn't understand. I can't be alcoholic. And given the fact there's no blood test and there's no x-ray, there's no biopsy that anybody can take to conclusively prove to me that I've got the disease alcoholism. You can do it with cancer. My mother had cancer. You can do it with diabetes. My dad had diabetes. They did a blood test. They did a sugar analysis. They diagnosed my dad with sugar diabetes. They put him on medication, and it fixed his diabetes. But with alcoholism, it's not the same. What you're met with is judgment, condemnation by a society that doesn't understand what Bill Wilson wrote and how it works to free me from the guilt, remorse, and shame that is attendant to the sufferer of alcoholism. And he said, they are not at fault. This is the only place you'll hear that. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. And I want to tell you how I seem to have been born. I've been born odd. I was born odd. I was. Something different about me. Not in here, out there. And here's how it looks. I feel like I don't fit in. I feel like I don't belong. I'm not sure what's wrong with me. I'm always wondering, what's wrong with me? Why do I think like this? Why do I act like this? What's wrong with you? It's like I can't find that peaceful place that most people get just naturally by birthright. And I can remember I felt like that ever since I can remember, long before that alcoholic family dumped its load on me. What they did was compounded the fracture. The problem is as I got older, they treated the compound fracture, but they couldn't fix the fracture, the broken spirit. Just because this is on my mind, I want to share it with you. I was sober quite a while before I realized what the problem might really be. You know, I never looked up the definition of the word spirit. I thought I knew. And here's what alcohol does for me. And if you're an alcoholic of my type, I bet it does it for you in a similar way. You see, a spirit is defined as the quality of courage, energy, determination, and assertiveness. And all those things are what happens inside me when I drink alcohol. I begin to be encouraged. Some people said incorrigible, but encouraged. And when I drink, for example, I know our first speaker said that wasn't her effect. That was my effect. Let me tell you about it. I was in the retarded class. I don't mean no disrespect if you have special kids. But in 1963, they didn't have the tools they have today to diagnose alcoholism in the family and how it was affecting my mental state. So they gave me an IQ test. How many of you taken the IQ test? Those of you who haven't, you should. It's really interesting. Have your sponsor's number close by. They didn't know why Wayne, little Wayne, the other little Wayne, the little Wayne. They didn't know why little Wayne was eating pencils and crayons, biting the teacher, chasing students around, biting them. They didn't know what to do with that. They didn't understand. They called that various diagnoses, borderline personality, character disorder, other things. They didn't understand that I was being maddened, not only from the alcoholism in the home, but in my own condition that I didn't understand that I had. So the only test they had to administer was the IQ test, trying to figure out what's wrong with me. So they gave me the IQ test, and I took it. And I want you to know, by the way, if you score over 100, you're pretty smart. You score over 120, you're really smart. Borderline genius. Score over a 150, there's a place called Mensa. They will recruit you to work in a think tank. They will pay you to sit around all day and think about yourself. Hell, we'll do it for free. I want you to know what I scored. I scored a 57. And I didn't cheat. And I got diagnosed mentally retarded. You know, I'm the kid that wore a helmet and didn't ride a bike. That's just the way it was. I went from 8th grade to my senior year in the special class. Never read a book. Not one book did I read. You know what they did with us kids in that special class? We had Moline miniature golf right across the street. We played putt-putt all day. They'd pick us up in the short bus to drive us across the street, which was beneficial. A guy named Tom was my protector in school. I want to fast forward because I want you to understand the effect produced in me, the alcoholic. So I'm insecure, I'm inferior, I feel inadequate. I've even acted out, they call it acting out now, so bad that I got diagnosed retarded, people. I hope you can tell that it might have been a misdiagnosis, but my sponsor won't give me that. He just said, yes, you are. You're like a clock that's right twice a day, and that's about it. And that's why Matt loved me so much. Senior dance. The senior dance at school. They let us kids from the special class go. Are you leaving?
Yes.
Why?
I'm in a program. I have to get back on Sunday.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Tell them to let you stay next time.
I will.
Tell them to call me. I'll tell them, by God. That's okay. When I saw you pulling the nudge from the judge, I figured that. Yeah. No. No, I got it here. Now you're going over. Okay. Now, where was I? I'm Wayne. I'm an alcoholic. So we're at the senior dance, and I'm the only one for the special class. Now, I haven't drank yet, and I want to tell you something. I swore to God I was never going to drink alcohol because I saw my dad drinking that brown whiskey, and I'm never going to drink that stuff. I don't know beer is alcohol. And I'm at this dance, right? And I'm easily distracted by shiny objects. What are you going to do? My sponsor couldn't control me either. I mean, so there's a dance. It's a senior dance, right? And I ain't never seen the girls dancing. I've been in the special class playing putt-putt. We don't know about the girls. I have a sister, but I didn't know she's a girl. And I'm standing there not knowing what to do. And Tom, he comes walking across the dance floor, and he's got his hand tucked in his coat. And he comes up on me, and he pulls out this long brown bottle with a red, white, and blue label. It's called Budweiser. He said, here, kid, drink this. It'll make you feel better. I would have drank battery acid for Tom. He was my hero. He's the one that kept the bullies off of me. Because you know how you are, some of you bullies. You always have to pick on weaker people who can't defend themselves. And Tom protected me from those guys. So I would have drank battery acid for Tom. I didn't know I was a guzzler. I drank that entire bottle of Budweiser down, let out a big old belch. And I said, Tom, that tastes terrible. I want a Pepsi-Cola. And Tom said, that's okay, kid. Have another one. You'll get used to it. Now, Tom is a friend of mine to this very day. He's known me all this time. He does not know what's happened. By the way, here's your pat on the back. He doesn't know what happened to me here. He thinks AA is a de-retarding program. He really does. He's not sure. Now, if you have a child with special needs, please don't feel offended. I'm not being offensive. This is my story. What Tom meant was when he drank the first time, his dad was a multimillionaire. So his basement was lined with liquor. He got into his dad's liquor one night and got drunk. Got disoriented, had to pee, thought he was in the bathroom, he was in his bedroom. Thought he was standing over the toilet, he was standing over his dresser drawer. And he said he almost went crazy trying to flush it. His mom lost her mind and made him do his own laundry. And he said, I'll never do that again. And from that day to this day, his mouth to my ear, he's never done that again in all these years. But you see, that isn't what happened to me. Somewhere between 4 and 5 Budweisers, I got so good looking I couldn't stand it. I ain't talking average. Hot! Those pimples became muscles. Look out, Jack Nicklaus. I looked down the dance floor and I bought me a blue-eyed blonde. I need freedom from bondage. I looked down on that dance floor and I bought me a blue-eyed blonde dancing with some loser. And I didn't even need the short bus. I walked right up to her and asked her if I could dance. Little did I know she recognized me from the special class. So she had a dance with me. Come on, you girls know how you are. We had a sympathy dance. We danced a second time. And then we danced a third time. And then she told the guy that brought her she's going to stay with me the rest of the night. I didn't even know I made a move. I should have been proud. We danced the rest of that night. Found out later sex meant 2 people. I didn't know that. Let me tell you something about the special class. They were not teaching us anything about sex ed. I'll tell you that right now. They didn't want any of us reproducing. I can guarantee you that. She ruined my sex life. I've been having sex since I was 13. I was usually alone. And she complicated the entire mess. Okay, long story short, she's 16. In Illinois, that's called statutory rape. She got pregnant. I don't even know what pregnant is. I'm in that class. So when they called me into the principal's office and they said, you've got a problem, I don't know what they're talking about. Well, her mom and dad's there and her dad wants to kill me for some reason. My only option was to marry her. Now, if you live in Illinois, you can't marry a girl 16 if you're 17. But you can in Missouri, where you can practically marry your cousin if you want to, I suppose. You know, I slipped up and was in St. Louis one time and forgot that was Missouri. That didn't go over so well in St. Louis, I'll tell you that right now. We drove to Palmyra, Missouri, we can get married. And we got married. Now, I wanted you to, here's a vision for you. Her dad wouldn't let me drive back with my wife in the car. I came back with my mom and dad, and she came back with her mom and dad. She's pregnant, and I'm out of my mind. I've graduated to special class, and it's 1968. A lot of things are happening across the creek over there. My brother's in Vietnam on an aircraft carrier, and my dad says, we need to get you out of here for a while. And I said, okay, what's that mean? He said, let's go join the military. I thought, what's this let's stuff? Let's go join the military. And I'm thinking, they'll never take me. I'm retarded. So we went down to they have all 4 recruiters right there. Well, my dad took me to the Marine Corps, and they saw my transcripts. And in 1967 and 1968, they put it right on your diploma, retarded. In 1968, they changed that to special ed. But in 1967, it was called mentally retarded. And that recruiter with the Marine Corps saw that, and he says, take him next door. It was the Navy. They took me. They did. I took the entrance exam and passed. Went to boot camp, and I thought, what's this? I don't like authorities. Too late. I got people screaming at me, and I don't like it. Don't do no good to cry. They don't like you crying in the military. Make it real fast. By the way, I never drank again after that. I thought, boy, I drank those Budweisers, and now I'm pregnant and married. Can't wait till we drink again, I'll tell you that right now. Went to boot camp at Great Lakes, got transferred to Coronado Island, trained with the Marine Corps. Didn't know I was going to be on a riverboat in Vietnam. After I got done at Coronado, they sent me to Treasure Island where my MOS was on a board. It said Butler, Waye B, B58, 6796, and my duty station was going to be PBR, which is Patrol Boat River, Camera Bay. And I was told my life was over. And I didn't want to go. I was so scared. I'm not going to lie to you. I was so scared, but I was more scared to drink. I didn't know what would happen. I've already got the disease and don't know it. Get to Vietnam, survive that for a year, come back. My wife wants a divorce. She was actually filing the papers while I was in Vietnam. I got the letter while I was in Vietnam. Couldn't even get myself killed. Got back, we got the divorce finalized, and I went into a blackout. Now, I don't know what a blackout is. I've only drank once. I go into what turned out to be a 5-day blackout. I'm on 30 days leave. I'm in a 5, I don't know, by the way, you don't know you're in a 5-day blackout. It's very interesting to discover that. I'm driving a car. I've got a woman sitting next to me. I don't know who she is. I never saw her before in my life. You ever met somebody like that where you're not trying to chew their arm off at 2 a.m.? You know what I mean? So I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, how do I introduce myself? I don't even know who she is. And then I notice she's wearing a wedding ring. And I think, oh my God, I've done the one thing I said I'd never do. I'm a homewrecker. I'm with a married woman. And she must have noticed there's something wrong, and she put her hand on my arm, and she goes just like this. What's the matter, honey? That's not my name. I don't know her. You don't be calling me honey when I don't know you. So I look, and she knows, I can't even talk. And she says, what's the matter? And I looked at her and I said, who are you? Do you know you women don't like to be asked that question on your honeymoon? Guess where we got married? Palmyra, Missouri. I knew how to get there. So I told my dad, I got married. I don't know who she is. He says, they're still sending people to Vietnam, right? Sign up again. I said, yes, sir. Because after I found out what her personality was like, I felt safer over in Southeast Asia. I really did. I don't mean no disrespect. Fast forward to November 8, 1977, when I hope to God it's my last drink. All this is going on, and folks, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't give up the only thing that brings me any peace. To wrap this up, let me give you a really good glimpse through 2 movies. Both of them are about alcoholism. One is Days of Wine and Roses. If you've never seen it, see it. Some of you won't relate, but I related to a woman for the first time in my life. I related to a woman as she's looking in that mud puddle in the alley, and she can't stand the reflection she's looking at in that dirty mud puddle. That's how I felt about myself. And the other movie about the effect produced by alcohol is a movie that if you haven't seen it, you should. It's called The Mask with Jim Carrey. The mask is a metaphor for alcohol. Remember the mask? It attaches itself to him the first time, doesn't it? He attaches to it the second time. And then he can't stop it from attaching to him. And then it goes after the dog. Elky dog. That's what alcohol did for me. It gave me a spiritual experience. It encouraged me. It enthused me. It gave me an energy that a depressant's not supposed to give you. See, that's the unusual effect of alcohol. Alcohol is not supposed to energize you. It's supposed to biochemically sedate you, and that is all it's supposed to do. If it does anything but sedate you, that's called alcoholism. Who knew? Yeah, I heard a whoops. It gave me a sense of determination. It gave me this ability to get outside of myself and live. That's what it seemed like. And I was able to assert myself. I was able to get out there and get with the business of living while drinking. Why would I stop drinking? Why would I stop drinking on the basis of intellectualization? So thank God I came to these meetings for 5 years after my dad come and tried to talk me into coming home with him. I ended up in AA shortly thereafter. For the next 5 years and 5 days, I went to meetings drinking. I would not give up that drink. I had no idea it was a problem. Not when it does what it does for me on the inside. I don't care what the cost is. I didn't even know that. I had made peace with Skid Row. Do you know why most of us don't get off Skid Row and recover? We got a little group around the country that I'm associated with. It's called the Skid Row Rats. We were the fortunate few that came literally off of Skid Row. And we all have one thing in common. We were on Skid Row 5 years or longer. Because many of us don't ever get well. And the reason is once you get there, if you're an alcoholic of my type, you adjust to it. And it becomes normal. And there's nothing you can offer me that's going to motivate me to want to come out except one thing. And this is how my sponsor got me off Skid Row. I'd go back to my dumpster, and he'd drop off a carton of cigarettes. I knew it was him. Some days I'd find a $5 bill in my dumpster. Other days I'd find a burger in my dumpster. And I kept going back to meetings because I figured it was Barney dropping that stuff off. That's why. I had no desire to stop drinking. Here's what happened to me. What have I got, 2 minutes? When am I done here? 2 minutes? What? Well, I don't want to violate your group conscience. I really don't. 8:30. Okay. Newcomer said that. I know they did. No offense. Don't hurt me. I see you. Oh, by the way, did I mention I became a cop? Does that help anything? I became a cop sober. Did I tell you that? Isn't that amazing I became a cop sober? I know that's not very popular in AA. But think about that. A Skid Row rat that weighed 146 pounds and couldn't stand up for himself. And I wanted to be a cop. And God used me. In my 10th year of sobriety, I became a cop. I passed all the tests. And by the way, when you've been psychiatrically institutionalized 17 times, they don't want to give you a gun most places. But in Iowa, they consider it a good experience. True story. And because of my history of alcoholism and recovery, they assigned me to drunk driving. I got to chase you guys all night. But I didn't chase you out of any vendetta. I wanted you in my back seat as a captive audience so I could talk to you about me. I remember telling this one guy in my back seat my story. We got almost all the way to jail, and I heard this voice from the floorboard. Will you shut up and lock me up? I heard every word you said, and I just don't understand why you're driving and I'm riding. I became his sponsor. A judge sentenced him to me. It's wonderful when they sentence you to me, because we're going to do the deal. I shouldn't admit this, but I actually had a guy arrested one night, and I decided to take him to a midnight meeting, and I handcuffed him to a chair. I did. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I thought it was kind of funny at the time. So, I mean, I don't have the time to tell you all that stuff. You know, I hope recovery shows. I'm no big shot. You know, a lot of people tend to make fun of guys that do what I do in AA, but I'm doing it because I know who I work for. And I have a purpose and a usefulness in Alcoholics Anonymous. Makes me really feel good to do this, not because of the ego feed, but because of the love. Not everybody's going to love me the way I love other people. Not everybody's going to like me. That has nothing to do with the equation of coming up here to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Has nothing to do with it, because the wave in the room changes as we share. Some people aren't going to identify with me at all. Some people resent the fact I was a cop, dismiss everything I say, because we have this inability to accept people for the way they are and not take it personally. And see, when I'm drinking Budweiser, I can accept everybody. I can. I'm a lover when I'm drinking. But you take that booze away from me, and I'm a frightened little boy. At 6'3", 265 pounds, I become this frightened little introvert that can't stand himself. But you put Budweiser in me, and I have a spiritual experience. Now, if I don't find a solution as effective or more than alcohol, and Bill called it a sufficient substitute for the effect produced by alcohol, if I don't find that sufficient substitute, it isn't that I might drink again. I will drink again someday. And lastly, I want to say this. The farther I get away from God and AA, the closer I get to a drink. I don't ever want to forget that. Notice I said God and AA. The source and the solution. One without the other renders itself insufficient at some point in the future. But I'm going to submit to you that for 38 years now, one day at a time, I've done my very level best to keep the two connected. Because I've seen what happens in my own family 6 times. 6 different members of my family went back to drinking after coming to AA. 4 of them are dead. And me and my brother are the 2 that's stuck. Because I have God in one hand and AA in the other. No free hands to drink. Thanks for letting me share.